Thanks, Dave. Yeah. Hey, everyone, my name's Jim. This is my second week at Harness as a developer advocate, so I'm excited to be here. So I want to talk a bit about how you can extend drone to potentially meet the needs of your workloads. And the first part of that is drone plugins. So let me give you a brief overview of drone plugins and why you might want to use one in your pipeline. So what is a drone plugin? So plugins are Docker containers that perform predefined tasks and are configured as steps in your pipeline. So plugins can be used to deploy code, publish artifacts, send notifications, and more. So a drone plugin is just a Docker container that's been designed to run as a step in a drone pipeline. So Drone provides an official curated list of plugins at plugins.drone.io. So here you'll find official drone plugins as well as plugins contributed by the drone community. So let's see what one of these might look like. So let's have an example use case for a plugin. So here we have a simple pipeline, drone pipeline, that publishes a file to an S3 bucket. The step uses the official AWS CLI Docker image that's provided by Amazon. So of course, we set the necessary environment variables from some secrets. And then there's one command that copies the file into the bucket at the location that we need. So if we looked through the official list of plugins at plugins.drone.io, Drone provides an official plugin for S3. So let's see how we could use it. So here on the left, we have the pipeline from the previous slide. And on the right, we have that step converted to use the S3 plugin. So the image is now plugin/S3. All the official drone plugins start with plugins. And instead of environment variables, we pass settings that the plugin expects. So hopefully you can imagine like a scenario where you have a lot of complex commands or scripting in a pipeline step. Plugins give you the ability to abstract all of that complexity away and simply pass the necessary settings that your step requires. And it's probably worth mentioning that there's no need to use plugins this way. If you would rather use off-the-shelf Docker images like on the left, that's totally fine. It's totally up to you if you want to adopt a plugin or write a plugin. So that the capability is there. If you want to learn more about plugins, the official drone plugin overview is at the first link here. And I highly recommend checking out plugins.drone.io to see if a plugin already exists for your use case before you try to write one on your own. Hopefully you wouldn't have to. So once you've written your plugin, if it's something that can be open sourced, we would love to list it in our plugins.drone.io. Just send us a pull request in the drone plugin index linked on in the third link here. And coming up on the 13th, Dave mentioned a couple upcoming meetups. Another one that we have coming on the 13th is around doing a drone plugin step-by-step. So if this is something that interests you, definitely sign up for that. That's plugins, but another capability of drone that we want to cover briefly is extensions. So plugins are very powerful, but sometimes it turns out that you can't do what you wanted with a plugin, and there's a good extension that you can, there's a good chance you can do it with an extension. So these are the different types of extensions that drone supports. So each of these would be its own separate process that some piece of drone would talk to. So for some extensions, the drone server would communicate with the extension. For others, maybe the runners would handle that communication. So you can learn more about extensions at the link at the bottom. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go into each type of extension and each capability, but hopefully that's something we can talk about in future meetups. So if there's a certain extension type that you'd like to see covered, definitely let us know. So to give you an example of what an extension can do, a conversion extension, for example, lets you manipulate the YAML file that drone retrieves from your repository. So at my previous company, we wrote a conversion extension that would look at the files changed in the commit range that triggered the pipeline and either include or exclude pipelines or pipeline steps based on what had changed. So here's an example of a drone pipeline that would use the paths changed extension that we wrote. So in this case, if this step here would only run if the file readme.md was changed. So a common use case for this plugin is monolithic repositories where, depending on the files or directories changed, you might want to have very different pipeline steps run. And yeah, with that, that covers everything, and I will hand it back to Dave.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Okay, so now you've got an overview of the different types of things you can do with drone extensions and plugins. And we have today our special guests. We've got Sarah Gardiner. She's a customer success engineer with BlazeRunner, and joining her is Sesha Palakodety. He's a director of customer success also at BlazeRunner. And they are going to share with us the plugin that they've created. So with that, Sarah, do you want to go ahead and share your slides?
Yeah.
Let's see, I was going to say good morning, but it's actually good afternoon for you. And while Sarah's getting going here, I'll share with folks that the way I found out about this is actually through your blog post, which was published about this plugin, and got to know about it that way. So for those of you who want to share what you've done with drone, blog about it, find out about it, and we'll invite you to come on and tell us about it. So go ahead, take it away, Sarah.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you, Dave. So Sesha and I are both members of BlazeRunner, and we support BlazeMeter. So I'll give a little intro into what BlazeMeter is and then why we made a plugin for it. So kind of an overview of what I'm going to cover is, again, a little intro of what BlazeMeter is overall in case anyone is not familiar with it, and kind of why and when we developed a plugin, how we did it, what you can use it for, and then some prerequisites before you can actually use the plugin efficiently, and then a couple examples and the results you can get from it. So little intro to BlazeMeter. We are a continuous testing platform. Our main product is for performance testing. We've got a bunch of customers that run performance tests from 10 users up to millions of users to load test their sites to make sure it's going to work when they've got a bigger load. It's very customizable. You can control the number of users, the hits per second, the ramp up time, a bunch of other settings. And in addition to actually running the tests, we have a reporting feature that is really robust. So you can analyze the data afterward and see what you can fix if it's not what you wanted to see. In addition to performance testing, we have functional testing, mock services, and API monitoring. So for functional testing, you can create scripts within the platform. We have like a script list mode where you can kind of drag and drop to create functional tests, or you can run existing scripts. You can just upload them and run them from there. And there's also a reporting feature for that. And then we have the mock services, which you can actually create mocks of different services. So you might have a performance test that is hitting a credit card portion and you don't want to be charging to credit cards or fake credit card numbers as you're trying to test. So you can mock up that within our system and use that to run during your testing. And And then we also have API monitoring. It just is another actually kind of separate product, but it is able to keep tabs on the health of your site. Okay, so for the plugin, the reason we created the plugin was we had some big clients, specifically the New York Times used Drone.io, and they really wanted an integration for their system. So we will make plugins either because it's a common tool or if we have a big customer ask for it. So we've made some plugins for Jenkins, TeamCity, Bamboo, Azure DevOps that we have many customers already using. So then we added in Drone. So it's a fairly new plugin for us. We built it Q1 of last year. Took us a couple iterations. New York Times gave us some feedback. And we released our beta version in Q3 and officially launched it in Q4. So it's been out there for a little while now, but lots of downloads at this point. And it's been being used a lot and working well. So a little bit about how we actually built it. We have our own internal development team for our company. And so usually any CI/CD tool is going to have their own guide on how to build a plugin and where to publish it. And so Drone had documentation that made it really easy to follow. It's the same link that you saw earlier in the other presentation, but we followed that to make the plugin. And we created a Docker image for BlazeMeter specifically. And all of our code lives in that container. And you can just invoke your predefined tasks. It goes right through your pipeline. And then what you can do with our plugin. So once you import that Docker image, you can put in whatever parameters you need, and then you can either run an existing test. You can actually create a brand new test and run it through there. You can update an existing test and then run it. You're able to update reports and notes. You can add specific JMeter properties right within it. And a really cool feature is you can actually continue that CI pipeline without having to wait for the test to complete. So sometimes the way people are using it, they have to run a test, wait, and then move on to the next step. And using the plugin allows for that step to be skipped, which is really cool. So some prerequisites. This is just kind of general prerequisites, one for BlazeMeter and two for Drone. You do have to have a GitHub account, and your GitHub repository does have to be public facing. You also have to have a BlazeMeter account because that's where you're going to generate your API key and secret. And then you can log into Drone using your GitHub credentials, and your repositories will just display there. So you can activate your repository, you can add the API key and secrets, and that's all you have to do before you can use the plugin. So it's a really simple setup. And so I've got two examples, one of how you can run an existing test with the plugin, and then one how you can actually create a new test and run it. So for an existing test, my pictures are going to look very similar to Jim's. You can just go to GitHub, get that repository that you want to use. If you have any additional files or dependencies that you need, you can upload them there. And then you've got your Drone YAML file, and you have to include any input parameters you want. So this is a pretty simplified one. There are a bunch of optional parameters you can add if you want. But once you have the required bits, all you really need is that BlazeMeter test ID, and you can kick it off. And so to kick it off, you can go to Drone, you can pick that repository, create a new build. And then while it's running, you can actually see it in Drone and on our BlazeMeter platform. So this is what it'll look like in Drone. So you've got last time it ran, what its current status is, so it'll be running. And then on BlazeMeter side, we have the reporting metrics, which you can watch live. So the two in combination is really cool to observe. And then for creating a new test, it's not very different. You have to specify a few more things because you are creating it instead of just running an existing one. So the beginning part of this is fairly similar. Going to GitHub, you got your repository. You do have to upload your new test file in addition to any files and dependencies. And then you got to specify your path. And then it just requires a few more input parameters. Just because, again, it's a new test, so you need to have the name and ID and a few more parameters in there. And then, again, you can just go back to drone and you can watch it. It'll look the same as this. You'll have the running while it's going. But that's kind of it. It's really simple to kick off an existing or a new test. And then there are results outside of the BlazeMeter platform that you can look at on drone. So if your test pass, you'll see the success status instead of running. If it fails, you'll obviously see a failure. And you can actually click on individual bars in a chart or a specific execution, and you can see more info about the test. So it's not just pass or fail. And then drone also provides log files, so you can download from there and run it. And then, like Dave mentioned, the reason that he found us is we wrote a blog on the plugin. So this is the link to that blog article. If you want to try testing on BlazeMeter, we've got that link. And if you're interested in learning more, you can contact us here. And that's all.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Sarah.